Hello again, guys. It is I, Free700. Today we're going to talk about the Revenant Legion. This Legion's a very interesting Legion indeed because of who they will become. And more importantly, what that Legion after this will become as well. First things first, let's talk about the colors of their armor and stuff like that. So the color of their armor is actually going to be no paint at all. So that's the reason why their Mark II power armor is going to have very little to zero decorations whatsoever. That arguably makes it easier to paint, as that means you just got to paint it the color of ceramite. But on the flip side, it also leads to some interesting customization, because you see the picture that I have here is a particular Revenant who decided to color his armor with some blood and some acid stains into his armor. That is strictly unique to him. As it turns out, the Revenants change their armor design depending what it is that they are fighting, as they decide to color their armor more pragmatically. So in other words, they do not do stuff like camouflage, but instead they will do stuff that will intimidate the enemy or inspire their comrades, which I think is very interesting. Obviously, they don't usually inspire their allies. They usually go for something that's a little bit more crude, like, hey, look, I look terrifying. I look like a fucking devil. Maybe you should be afraid of me. So that's typically something there. Also, something that's more important to know about their armor is that they typically do not wear their helmets. This is something that I think a lot of people gloss over, but this Legion in particular tends not to wear their helmets because it's kind of unsettling when you see what's underneath and you see what they are doing to your people. So let's get on down to it. What the fuck do they do? You see, the Revenant Legion was made, and of course, on Terra. Now, the differences between this Legion and the others is that the other Legions were selecting people who were, nobles, higher class, people who were well-fed, people who were well-educated, and they had babies, and they would usually give those children to the Legions. This Legion is a little bit different. This Legion actually comes from just the dregs of society, the slums, more or less. And if you know anything about Warhammer 40K and 30K, you would know that if you were pulling from the slums, basically the underground, you're pulling people who have a lot of mutations, a lot of irradiation, a lot of just nasty chemicals in their body and their DNA. These people do not look anywhere near suitable as candidates. It's even more surprising they're even alive at this point. It's even more surprising they're considered human, honestly. But they're actually viable candidates for this Legion. And it's mostly due to their gene seed. It's not actually due to any special traditions or rituals they do. No, it's their gene seed. Their gene seed, for whatever reason, is a lot more resilient than other gene seeds, like the Thousand Suns. The Thousand Sun gene seed is very shoddy at best, and usually kills most of its people. But this gene seed, the Revenant Legion gene seed, is pretty damn tough and endurable to withstand this kind of heavy mutation and degradation of your DNA, and still turn you into a full-fledged Astarte with zero issues. You're not going to end up like a Thunder Warrior where you're just a grotesque mess. But that's pretty damn interesting to note, that this gene seed's that tough, whereas other gene seeds are not that well built. So in the early days of the Unification War, when the Astartes were finally deployed alongside the Thunder Warriors, these guys were used to fight in deep canyons, fighting in irradiated fuck pits. They were usually used for the worst of the worst kind of scenarios, much like the Warhounds and even the Salamanders. So that's something that's very interesting to note. So these guys were used more or less in the worst battles that the Imperium ever really had to face. That's great. This leads to the adoption of these kinds of battle tactics in the Legion. The Legion itself slowly started to gain these traits over time. So this isn't strictly their gene state, which is great. Again, I love this, because it establishes in the lore that this is not due to their gene seed. They do not fight this way because of their gene seed. They're fighting this way because this is what their Legion has been doing since they've been created. I love that. I love that a lot. Like, we don't necessarily know if the Warhounds and the World Eaters have always been fuck-ass mad. We just assume that it's because of the Butcher Nails. But there is some evidence to show that some of them, before the Butcher Nails, were still fuck-ass mad. This Legion, though, we know for certain It is not due to their gene seed that they are fuck-ass crazy and always going into these deep, blood-trenched fucking battles. No, this is just the way that they've always been. This is the way the Emperor personally has been using them, which is awesome. I like that. Now, something that's very interesting about this Legion is that they use the Homophagia a lot more than other Space Marines. So the Homophagia is one of the implants that they get where anything that they eat, they can gain memories from it, which is very powerful. It's a very awesome tool indeed. So what this Legion would do is that they would eat the corpses of whoever it is they've killed. They would also eat the corpses of their own allies to hopefully gain their skills and hopefully learn more about their enemies, learn what it is like enemy troop positions, maybe learn a bit about strategies. Maybe they're fighting an enemy who's really good at hit and run tactics and they go, shit, how the fuck are they doing it? And then they eat their corpse and go, oh, that's how the fuck they're doing it? Hey, we should do this. This is something that's very fascinating to me because I like a Legion that is actually using their implants. A lot of Legions don't do that. Hell, even Space Marine chapters, not a lot of them do that. You don't usually see a salamander grab a Tau steak and just start eating it and going, oh shit, that's how a battle suit works. No, you don't usually see that. So that's why the Revenant Legion is very unique. They love to utilize that Homophagia, which is really good. This means that they're having an edge in the battle. This is also something that's more interesting is that they use this in their training for their, prospects. The recruits that they usually have are usually pulled from just the worst of the worst society, as I've stated before. Now, the issue is that Gene Seed doesn't always work, and this one's a lot tougher than most Gene Seeds, so it's not going to outright kill you. It may actually be more malleable than other Gene Seeds. But the issue is that you're still going to have a lot of deaths. Thankfully, poor people tend to have a lot of babies. Also, they use prisoners of war. They also use captured individuals from other tribes that they may have raided. So this is good news. This is a long line of recruits. The thing is, though, is that when they are recruiting them and training them, teaching them how to be a Space Marine, they tend to give their recruits the bodies of those that they have killed. This way, when they're done with their training, they're a full-fledged Space Marine. They're battle ready. They already know how to load their bolter. They already know the tactics the enemy's going to do. This is perfect. This is great. This is something that I wish other Space Marines would do. Because here they are using their Homophagia, so that way they're training, their basic training, like doing push-ups, running, learning how to use a fucking gun. But then they're using their Homophagia to eat the enemies that the chapter is currently having an issue with. And all of a sudden they go, hey, I know everything there is about this. I don't need to get shot 6 times by this guy to realize those shots are going through my armor and probably killing me. No, I just got to eat this piece of meat, know what his gun does already, and then boom, that way I save myself a lot of time. That way I save the chapter a lot of time, so that way they don't have to explain this to me. That way I don't have to learn by getting shot at. And hey, look, I just began and I already killed 6 of these bastards. This is a great way for a Legion to work. This is what the Revenant Legion is very interesting, very down to my kind of level. Now, we talked about their armor earlier, and this is also what's playing into it. The Homophagia allows them to kind of understand who it is they're fighting. This allows them to understand the culture and stuff like that. By doing so, they're understanding what makes them scared, what makes them inspired. This way, they can customize their armor in appropriate ways. Not only do they customize their armor in appropriate ways, but they also realize, hey, this guy doesn't like it that we eat people. So you know what we should do? Let's take those prisoners that we captured from the last battle and let's eat them in front of the snipers over there so that way they could see us eating their comrades. That sounds like a good idea. That is exactly what the Revenant Legion will do. And this is also garnered why the Revenant Legion is not well known, as the Imperium doesn't want this to be their poster boy. These guys are a little fucky. So it's kind of best to keep them in the battles, but quickly take them the fuck out of there before a remembrancer comes around and starts jotting down notes of what he saw. Because these guys are, they are definitely fucking weird. As we see later on, they do blood rituals and sacrifices, and they do a lot of cannibalistic shit, And not only is the cannibalistic shit for the homophagia, so that way they can learn about it, they sometimes eat the dead only because they know it demoralizes the enemy, because the enemy can see them as they're eating the dead. And if you're a remembrancer, that's gonna kind of fuck with your head a bit to see that happen. You're gonna be like, whoa, this is kind of creepy. Now, since we're talking about eating the dead and how creepy it is, this is what's gonna make it even worse. So every recruit, no matter how disgusting they look, no matter how abhuman they look, no matter how heavily mutated and irradiated they look, once they receive this gene seed, they actually turn into angelic beings. Like, they almost look beautiful. They look charismatic. They look angelic. This, of course, makes it even more unsettling when you see these beautiful, almost like as if their faces were sculpted by God. That's how great they look. And now all of a sudden you see that they have really sharp teeth and they are ripping the face off of your comrade who you've been with for like 3 years in the military, and they're just drinking his blood and fucking eating him. Yeah, that could definitely fuck with your head when you see something so beautiful and awe-inspiring, but then you realize how fucking brutal it is. The way it's just eating your comrade like it's fucking nothing. Yeah, that can really fuck your mentality. And it most certainly has. It really does. It's effective. Now, some history about the chapter in question is they've had a lot of interesting issues. Like, Rogel Dorn actually filed a complaint against them officially because he views their deeds as grotesque and not what his father's vision should really entail, which is a lot of cannibalism and a lot of just unnecessary, totally barbaric shit. But hey, I'm all for it, baby. You guys keep doing you. I love it. But there's also some very interesting stuff about the early days of the Unification Wars and the early days of the Great Crusade. See, what happens is, after Earth has been fully unified and the Emperor's like, okay, let's conquer the solar system. Venus, Mercury, Neptune, blah, blah, blah. He sends out the legions in an appropriate manner. Mostly he focused on Mars and Venus, and this legion, the Revenant Legion, did have some encounters on Venus. But they were mostly used on Neptune. And Neptune was like the farthest planet that they really cared to go. So, what did the Emperor do? He just sent them on board and just sent them in there. 120,000 roughly. Well, they didn't hear from them for quite a while. For a few months, actually, they didn't hear from the Legion. So they assumed they got their ass kicked. That's what anyone would assume, right? So the Emperor says, fuck it, let me just conquer the rest of these inner planets, get everything working, get the factories working, get Mars under control, and then we'll go over to Neptune and kick whatever's ass is there. Well, the Emperor goes there, and he finds something very weird. One, his Legion won. They succeeded. But two, none of the Legion troops that he sent seemed to be the same Legion troops that are standing before him. And also, more weirdly enough, the numbers of the Legion is still the same. So, still 120,000, slightly more actually. And now it's like, okay, well, what the fuck happened? Here's what happened. The Legion arrived to Neptune, kicked whoever's ass was there, and because they suffered casualties, they just took the people of Neptune and just simply started breeding them. Now, the people of Neptune weren't really that human-looking to begin with. They're very weird-looking people. And, of course, that's due to mutations. Living on a weird-ass planet so far away from the sun, with no real, breathable atmosphere, you're going to kind of mutate and look a little weird. Well, they started to look beautiful again because of this gene seed. So it's really awesome to see this. And this is a strategy they're going to use time and time again. Any planet they go to, this is what they will do. It's been stated that their apothecaries never knew what the fuck a break was. They were always working, always constantly giving people implants, constantly working on new Astartes, because that's the way the Legion worked. Now, because of this, the Emperor never really allowed them to have high, cool tech weaponry, so you won't see anything like plasmas or meltas or volkite. You won't even see tanks, really. You won't see any of that shit. So what they had to stick with was bare bones minimum. they were basically used as frontline infantry. So they would have just their power armor, a bolter, chainsword, that's it. Nothing else. Good fucking luck, buddy. And that's what they would be used for. They would be used kind of like the Warhounds, where they would just come in and break the enemy's lines. But they weren't exactly as slaughter heavy as the Warhounds. The Warhounds, it was just a fucking slaughter. These guys, they tend not to do that. What they tend to do is they tend to charge out into battle, cleave down the enemy, and then keep fighting until it becomes a prolonged engagement. So they're not exactly ones like the World Eaters, where the World Eater will allow you to stab him in the chest so long as he cleaves your body in half. These guys are going to try their best to block that hit from their chest, even though all that's going to do is just prolong the fight. So these guys are a little bit more, I would say, durable. But that actually works well for them, because then that means that they're not suffering catastrophic casualties like the Warhounds and the World Eaters. Now, at the same time, though, as stated before, they're very self-sufficient. They're able to keep their numbers up and actually improve upon their numbers if the battle goes on long enough. And this is a great strategy for war, as you're fighting an enemy who not only knows everything there is about you, but you're also fighting an enemy who can recruit directly from you. That's very terrible to fight against. This is almost like a fucking parasite, honestly. But that's the way this Legion works, and I really love it. Unfortunately, this Legion does have a kind of a sad ending, and that's something that we're going to talk about right now. The Legion's sad ending is that they finally linked up with their Primarch, Sanguinius. That's great. So now they became the most cultured Legion out of all the other Legions. And it turns out the blood drinking, the eating corpses, wasn't the red thirst, it wasn't the black rage, it wasn't any of that. It was just simply those were their traditions. But it kind of gets a little upsetting because while they accepted Sanguinius pretty well, they loved him. Because, see, Sanguinius, when he first meets his Legion, he vows before them. He actually kneels before them and says that he will always do good by them. This is new. See, even Malcador, a Sigilant, said this Legion needs to be kept an eye on. These guys are fucking crazy. But Sanguinius is the first one who said, I'm always with you guys no matter what. I will always do what's best for you. This, of course, uplifted their spirits, and they become arguably the most noble chapter that's ever existed. Legion, my bad. I always say chapter. It's a habit. Now, later on, some of them old Legion is still around. Some kind of weird happens. So, people start looking at the records and they start realizing that the chapter, the Legion Master, is the same Legion Master who's been dead several times. And it turns out what it is the Legion Master is not necessarily the same guy. So it's just kind of like an Alpha Legion tactic, where what they do is they share names depending on what skills you've absorbed from your comrades. I know it sounds kind of fucky, but essentially what it is let's say your comrade was an excellent sniper, and he dies. Well, you do a little ritual where you eat his corpse as a way to commemorate and honor him. But while you're eating him, your omophagia acts up, and now you learned how to snipe as damn good as him. Now you're going to change your name to your comrades, because now you are essentially him. This is what's basically been happening for the Legion Master, is that anytime he dies, someone would eat his corpse, and they would basically gain all the skills and all the knowledge and all the personality traits of that dude. And they would assume the same name and assume the title. This is very fascinating. This is very Alpha Legion-ish. But, unfortunately, this doesn't really save the Revenants, as the Revenants are now gonna die. Because the Horus Heresy happens, and what happens is the last of the Revenants were with Sanguinius when he was trapped on Cygnus. And Cygnus is essentially a demon world, where demons just started overrunning the Legion. And the Revenants made a very valiant last stand. It's because of them that Sanguinius was able to really get out of that fucking situation. But it's very saddening to see them die. But on a high note, so you guys don't feel depressed at the end of this video, so that way you guys don't feel like you need to take a Zoloft pill at the end of this, just know that despite all this cool shit about this Legion, their later successor chapters adopt the same rituals. They're exactly like the Flesh Terrors. They're exactly like them. So that's something that's very awesome to know, is that even though they're dead and even though they're long forgotten, they kind of, like a phoenix, resurrected, except in a different form, in a different way, and they would be called a different chapter, which is the Flesh Terrors. They're very similar, very, very similar. But, of course, there is some, I would say, deviations. But it's still good to know that, hey, GW still incorporates the Revenants in the Blood Angels, just in a different way. Da-na-na, Blood Angels is the successor. But yeah, I find this very fascinating because Salamanders, Blood Angels, their previous legions were very different compared to what they eventually became. They were not nearly so noble as what they were mostly known for in the other books. So, besides that, this has been Free 700. I'm out. See you guys next time. Comment down below what you guys think. Maybe you guys enjoy it. Maybe you guys want to hear about Salamanders next. Besides that, comment down below and let me know. See you guys next time.